Welcome to the Lightfoot Festival and Lightfoot Band Workshop. This is the first of two workshops. There will be another one at 2:30 this afternoon. I'd like to thank Creative Nomads for all their help in creating this wonderful space. And I'd like to run through quickly the sponsors who have supported the festival. And our first sponsor is Tim Corney's RBC Wealth Management, and they are our title sponsor. And Ruth Tan is here today representing that company. And thank you so much, and thank Tim for us. We also would like to recognize Night Vision Creative Agency. They're here with all the cameras, Tyler Knight. And I would like to thank Carol and Tim, Roy Tim, who will be doing photography later on today. Let me see, Wags Uniform Service, which is the company that the Lightfoot family worked with in Orillia for many years. Adam Chambers, our Member of Parliament, who has donated tickets to the workshops. Apple Annie's, Best Western Plus, Mariposa Inn, Champlain Waterfront Hotel, Fairfield Inn and Suites, Brewery Bay Food Company, Creative Nomads, Mariposa Market, North Simcoe Art, and the art on the wall today is from artists who are who created these pieces in memory of Gordon and also inspired by his songs. And Orillia First Aid, the Orillia Streets Alive, and our promotional sponsors, Muskoka 411, Orillia Matters, Sun Online Orillia, CTV News Barrie, Orillia and Lake Country Tourism, Impression House, and we want to especially thank Mark Webster Productions as well. I'd just like to note that Tim Corney's RBC Wealth Management have a table at the back, and Nicholas Jennings, who is the official biographer for Gordon Lightfoot, is with us today with the table selling his books at the back as well. Thank you very much. And we'd like you to remind you to put your phones on silence, please. And that without any further ado, I'd like to welcome back, after last night's fabulous performance at the Opera House, the Lightfoot Band. Yes. I forgot the most important thing. We have the Mayor of Orillia here, Mayor Don McIsaac. And he is going to bring greetings.
And John.
Greetings from the city. Did you say important or impotent? So good afternoon. I'm Mayor Don McIsaac, and on behalf of City Council, I'd like to bring you all greetings. I'm certain that each of you holds a special connection to Gordon's music, and it has touched you in so many different ways. It's a rare privilege to be here firsthand and hear about Gordon's journey from those who performed alongside him and collaborated in the studio. This insight enriches our appreciation of his work and the impact he's had on the community. Thank you all, and take it away, guys.
Hiya, folks, and thanks everybody for coming out. You're going to be stuck with me for a few minutes. The other guys will be back up here very shortly. Okay? All right?
Oh, I guess that means we're not up here right now.
I think that's correct. Take a hike.
I'm not going too far away.
Okay, all right. See ya.
I can't work this way. This is fun.
First of all, thanks so much to the Lightfoot Days Committee, especially John Winchester, Daphne Mainprize. They've been fantastic with everything they've done here, so can we give them a hand? And the mayor of the Sunshine City, Orillia, Mr. Don McIsaac, we thank him for being here, for being such a good supporter. Yeah, give the mayor a hand. And just one thing, one confession I have to make. You know, you hear in the same sentence too many times about musicians and addictions, all that kind of stuff. So I do have a confession that I have become addicted thanks to the mayor, Don McIsaac. I have become addicted to Aurelia butter tarts. There you go. Okay, so we're going to hear an awful lot, of course, about Gordon Lightfoot, but today is about the musicians who have backed Gordon over his 60-plus year career, and especially the Lightfoot Band. This is going to be about the evolution of the Lightfoot Band. With some stories, the boys will be up here to join me very, very soon. If you want more details on Gordon's life, go see Nick Jennings in the back, the author of the great Lightfoot book, okay? There he is. Okay, very briefly, let's go back to the early 60s. Gordon had separated himself from the Two-Tones and moved on to a solo career. He had played places like Steele's Tavern and of course, the iconic Riverboat. Then in 1963, Gord made an appearance on a CBC TV show called Music Hop, which was, that show ran at 5:30 every night, every weekday from a different city in Canada. And I think it was Thursdays was the Toronto Music Hop. That show was hosted by a young Alex Trebek. And yes, that is, I'll take folk music for 200, Alex. That Alex, okay? The house band was a group called Norma Matteo and the Rhythm Rockers. The bass player in that band was a fellow named John Stockfish. The lead guitarist was a fellow named Red Shea. Gord apparently liked a lot of what he heard from those guys, and he asked them to join him for some gigs that he was doing. Gord signed with Albert Grossman in New York, the manager who also handled Ian and Sylvia, Bob Dylan. And then in 1966, Gord traveled to New York, studio in New York, to record his first album called Lightfoot, where he would record Ribbon of Darkness, some Early Morning Rain, some of those great classic Lightfoot tunes. Backing him, well, the producer was a fellow named John Court, who worked with Albert Grossman. The musicians were David Ray, Bruce Langhorne, and a bass player named Bill Lee. David had done some shows with Gord in Toronto, but the other two guys were session musicians from New York. Bruce Langhorne, multi-talented, multi-instrumentalist, had been doing a lot of sessions, and if you folks remember a record called Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds, it's a song written by Bob Dylan about Bruce Langhorne. Bruce had quite a reputation, and he was pretty adept at the old tambourine. So, and the bass player, Bill Lee, was I'm sure a little more famous for his movie director son, Spike Lee. So it was an interesting collection of people on that first record. We go to 67 and 68, and Gord went to Nashville, back to New York, back to Nashville for the Way I Feel album, Did She Mention My Name album, and Back Here on Earth was the third one. And throughout that, the bassists, the musicians, were Red Shea and John Stockfish, plus some local studio guys. And the one that sticks out to me is the one done in New York for the Did She Mention My Name album, studio drummer by the name of Herb Lavelle. And we'll hear this track, and I think you'll remember it.
Black day in July, Motor City madness has touched the countryside, and through the smoke and cinders, you're gonna hear it.
Great drum track from a great studio guy from New York. Okay, later in '68, Gord had a run of shows at Massey Hall, and along with producer Elliot Mazer, they recorded the Sunday concert album. And on that were three musicians, was Gordon Lightfoot, Red Shea, and Gordon's new bass player, who would be with Gord for quite a few years. And if we can hear one of the tracks from that album, you will hear what a great influence the bass player was about to become with the sound of Lightfoot.
I'm not saying that I love you, I'm not saying that I'll care if you love me.
Such a big part of the Lightfoot sound. And that gentleman, of course, is who will join me right now, Rick Haynes.
Thank you, Barry.
Hiya, Rick.
Hiya, Barry.
Glad you could be here, buddy.
We are thrilled to be invited here today. This is a big deal for us, a special occasion. Actually, I have an admission to make.
Shoot.
This is my first ever workshop I've been involved in. I've never done a workshop before.
Me either, buddy. We're
No?
virgins.
You've done workshops
I
before.
have not.
You've done all kinds of this stuff.
Well, something similar. But
Are you accusing us of being the odd couple?
so, okay, 68. this
68.
Sunday concert album.
Wow.
Now, before that,
Before.
you had been the bass player in some well-known Toronto R&B bands, the Majestics, Bobby Chris and the Imperials.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, you're doing a live folk album on bass.
Wow.
Tell us about that.
You know, that was a dramatic departure from what I was studying and learning and playing at that time. I was finding my roots in jazz and blues. I loved playing with big R&B bands, with horn sections. Like today, I would liken it to Tower of Power, Chicago, those kinds of bands. I love that stuff. However, that kind of dried up. The Beatles had a lot to do with that drying up in Toronto, the Toronto scene, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, you were experiencing the same thing, and we were looking for work. We were looking for bands to play with. And I had started playing with a little trio, played with a few bands, but besides the R&B bands, at the time that this was evolving, I was playing with a trio and a girl singer, and we were playing in bars on weekends just for extra money and to have fun playing.
What kind of music?
Pop music, covered. We were a cover band.
Okay.
Hey there, Georgie girl.
Okay.
I sang on Broadway in the band. They were saying, Rick, you got to sing a song. Okay,
right.
I'll sing a song.
Could you sing a few? No, I'm kidding.
But so, things were going along. I never intended to be a full-time career musician because I was already married to my lovely wife, Marilyn. I don't think she's even here yet, but she will be. We were married in 1965. So I was starting a family, and I didn't intend to be a full-time career musician. I didn't want to be the starving musician that made his family suffer for his art and his enjoyment. So I was quite happy to have a day job and play on weekends where I could. Well, I'll cut that part of the story short because I don't want to prolong this, but we had a guy in the band who worked, we've all heard of Long and McQuaid's. Long and McQuaid's was probably just one store then, I think, in downtown Toronto.
Yep.
And Don Morley worked in the guitar. You knew Don.
I did.
And Bob Abbott and Don Morley and Pete Traynor, who built the bass amps, yeah.
Yep.
And Don Morley was a pretty good cover guitar player, all-around guitar player. He was the leader of the band. His passion and dream was to go on the road. He said, we got to go on the road and play in the South Pacific on the Holiday Inn circuit. And Don, that's not for a married man, you know. And we also had a drummer, I forget his name actually. He was a cool guy, worked in a bank, had a great job. He said, I'm not going on the road, I got a good day job. So anyway, and Don finally, one day, a band came through, Long and McQuaid's, was looking for a guitar player, and they hit it off. And Don came to me and he said, look, you know what I really want to do with my passion, so I'm going to leave the band, and he knew that would break us up. So he said, you gotta, I heard a rumor, and he said, recently Gordon Lightfoot came into the store and he was quietly asking if anybody knew a bass player. He said, Rick, you gotta go and get that gig. And I said, Gordon Lightfoot, that's folk music. I don't know anything about folk music. He said, I don't care. Go get that gig. That's the best gig you could get in Canada right now. So I started looking at records and looking up names. Of course, Gord Lightfoot was already unlisted in the musicians directory in Toronto. I couldn't get his number. Couldn't phone the bass player, obviously.
Right.
And so I contacted Red Shea. And that was my first interaction directly with Red Shea. I had seen Red play before that. But so I got Red on the phone and I said, I heard you guys might be looking for a bass player. And he said, I don't know. Well, give me your number and we'll keep it, you know. I said, okay. And I thought, not much out of it, you know. I thought maybe I'll never hear from him. But 6 weeks later, the phone rang. Hi, this is Gord. Oh, hi, Gord. Gordon Lightfoot. I said, yeah, I know who you are. And he said, I heard you want to play in my band. I said, yeah, I'd love to have a chance and audition for it. He said, well, okay, we'll do that. We'll be in touch. Click.
Very Gord-like.
Yeah, very Gord-like, as we all learned later as it went down the road. So that was how I got introduced to playing for Gord.
That's great, man. Okay, so then the next few years, you went on, you and Gord and Rick did the Sit Down Young Stranger.
Yeah. You know, it was interesting. When I started working for Gord, I mentioned this on stage last night. I had never even been on an airplane before.
Right.
So it was a big deal. And I had never recorded for professional recording before, like a real record deal.
And Sit Down Young Stranger was a studio album.
A studio album.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah, in Los Angeles, getting on a big old 707 and flying down to LA with Gordon Lightfoot recording in Los Angeles with two of the top staff producers for Warner Reprise. The deal was made with Warner Brothers, but they put him on the Reprise label, which was Frank Sinatra's division of Warner Brothers at that time. So yeah, it was a really big deal, huge. It was the producers, the level of excellence. These were the best guys at Warner Brothers in the early 70s.
Yeah,
Younger guys, really hot, hip. They were doing everything. And the two of them collaborated together to produce the Sit Down Young Stranger album, which later became If You Could Read My Mind.
And then you went on to Summertime Dream and Don Quixote, Nashville, and back to L.A. again with Lenny Waronker.
Yeah, we went to
How was that?
Nashville with Joe Wizard.
Yes.
And Joe phones me every few weeks. We have a conversation. Joe's such a great guy.
Great guy.
Joe Wizard is the guy who produced a whole lot of the Earth, Wind, and Fire albums. He was the producer of Silk Degrees, Boz Scaggs' album, and happened to be a really big fan of Gordon, and followed Gordon, and he's very, very much a fan of the Lightfoot band. He's waiting for us to come to California. He wants to come and see us.
That's great.
But Joe was different. I mean, Lenny and Joe were like day and night. They were two different guys. They got along fine, but they were completely different with different ears and different ideas. And it was the collaboration on the first album, Sit Down Young Stranger, was really interesting, very smooth, very professional. And then I didn't know what went on behind the scenes, but it was decided that Joe would produce Don Quixote. Mm-hmm. And we went to Nashville, and Nashville was a hoot. It was a whole different scene with the musicians, you know, the casual approach of the musicians, just their demeanor, you know.
Different from L.A.
Really different, yeah. Different, a whole different vibe than L.A.
Okay.
But, and I wouldn't say that it was better or more suited to Gord or any of the above. It was just different.
Yep.
So the albums are different.
And then later that year after Don Quixote, and Don Quixote was the entrance of Terry Clements.
It was.
In the band,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Then later that year, you guys decided to record in Toronto.
That was a conscious decision to bring the recording back to Toronto,
back to Canada.
But bringing Lenny Waronker up.
Yes, Lenny came,
Yep.
but it was you and Gord and Red and Terry and some Toronto studio guys, and if we could just hear.
Yes.
And then talk about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Dig out old Dan's records. Bring out old Dan's records. We're all here, we've all got days for dance.
So how was that experience?
That was very interesting, and it was fun. There was a couple things going on there for those of you who might recognize or know that some of those instruments are played by the Good Brothers.
There you go.
And the drums are played by this guy, Mr. Keane. And that was really the start of something big. It really was.
It was the start of something.
It was the start of something. It really, and it was the start of something big. I can't take that away.
Well, thank you.
You know, and it was fabulous. And it gave a new direction. And of course, Gord was always writing more songs. He was very prolific in those days. He was writing a lot of songs. And so Barry came in as a hired gun, a studio drummer, to play just the sessions and be very professional. Of course, the Good Brothers side of it, there were a lot of horsing around and a lot of fun. But the overall project was very smooth and professional, and it really, I think it's a fabulous album. I really do.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
But
Old Dan's records sounded a little too fast to me.
We'll work on that, Rick. So then there was the Sundown, Cold on the Shoulder, and Gord's Gold Volume 1 that were all done at Eastern Sound.
Yep.
With you guys and Jim Gordon playing
Jim
drums.
Gordon came in. The LA guys, the company, the Suits, Warner Brothers, they wanted to interject people into the projects to try to bring more to the project. So they suggested using Jim Gordon on a couple things, and that was quite an experience. Maybe you could tell the folks who Jim Gordon was.
Oh, he was part of the Wrecking Crew, the famous LA studio guys. He had played on Hall & Oates, Rich Girl, You're So Vain, Carly Simon, Wichita Lineman, Glenn Campbell. I can't tell you how many great records this guy played on. And for a young drummer, learning how to be a studio drummer, we never met, but he might have been my greatest drum teacher just from listening to him. So how was it working with him?
It was really interesting.
How?
Well, he drank a lot. But he didn't show it, really.
Okay.
He was also an antique hunter. When we weren't in the studio, he was going up and down Yonge Street to antique stores looking for antique furniture. That's what a lot of rock and roll guys did in the 70s.
Yeah.
Gord was doing it, too.
Okay.
Gord had a lot of antiques. But Jim Gordon, he had a vision for how the songs should go, and he would we would start a song, Gord would count it in, and we'd play a bar or two, and Jim would hold his hands up and stop playing, and he'd say, "Stop." And Gord would look at him, and he'd say, "Too fast."
That sounds familiar.
This is how we recorded Carefree Highway, by the way.
Huh.
And he must have stopped Carefree Highway about 7 or 8 times as we were, and finally he just got up and he started walking around. He got out of the drum booth and he said, "We gotta slow this song down, Gord. Turn the lights down in the studio. Can we get some incense and some ambience in here?" I'm not kidding you. And Gord was like, "What am I going to do with this guy?" You know, the LA guy comes in with the record company. He's kind of trying to play ball with him. It was a very interesting experience. So to say Jim Gordon was a strong personality is an understatement.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Very good drummer. Fabulous drummer. Very simple, tasty drummer.
He was fantastic.
Yeah, less is more kind of guy.
And Cold on the Shoulder was the introduction of Pee Wee Charles into the band,
Into
right?
the band, yes. And onto the road, Pee Wee.
And on the road.
Now,
And-
that Pee Wee Charles, who his real name is Ed Ringwald, which is what he goes by now. Ed was kind of an anomaly because he was the first guy in the band that was added to the touring band. We were a trio up until that point. Well, Terry and Red overlapped a little bit and played
Sure.
together on a few shows.
Yep.
But then Red did leave, and Terry took over that chair, and we did sit in chairs in those days. And then, but then Gord decided to hire Pee Wee.
Interesting, and a great addition.
Great addition.
Great addition.
Now, he always felt a little bad about it because he feels like he stole Ed from Ian and Sylvia, because Ed had been in Ian and Sylvia's band.
Ian Tyson, for sure, the Great Speckled Bird.
Great
I think.
Speckled Bird,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so then we move on to.
Sorry, I'm kind of dragging your timeline down a little bit, I think.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Everybody, we like Rick's stories, don't we, folks? Huh? You're
Thank
good.
you.
You're good, buddy.
Thank you, okay.
So we move on to the Summertime Dream album at Eastern Sound with Lenny Waronker.
Yeah.
And I have a question for
Yeah.
you, okay? We know that how the record was recorded. It was a first take, first time we ever played it. But
Yeah.
listening to the beginning of the record one time here, I have a question for you.
Okay.
That's a different version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next cut. That's too fast also.
Next.
Next cut on that record, actually.
Here we go. So, the bass part.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Very
Yeah.
simple. Very
Pretty simple, yeah.
And that was, had you rehearsed that at all with Gord before you?
Not
no,
really.
You just
no.
played what you
It's
felt.
just learning the changes and playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, recently, I've noticed you changed the part a little bit different, and I heard this on Gord's Gold Volume 2, if we can play that.
Good work over
Listen
there.
to the bass.
Yeah.
So it's quite a bit different.
It is.
And to me, it's iconic. Like
Oh,
it's
thank
hard
you.
for me to hear that song without that bass part. Where did that come
So
from?
you're saying I shouldn't mess it up when we do it on stage? No, where it came from was I took the first part from the first take, and it kind of evolved in my head as we were playing it mostly on the road, to the point where I thought, well, if I take those da-da-da down, take them up an octave, gives me a point to slide down from, to make the entry a little more dramatic in the introduction.
Love that slide, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I like to hit it too when I can.
I've noticed. I've noticed.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so then we had Endless Wire, Dream Street Rose, and then in the fall of 1980, we had a session at Eastern
Yeah.
for a song Gord wanted to record, which was written by Red's brother, I think.
Les.
Yes, Les Pouliot.
Les Pouliot.
My
Red
love-
Shay's original name was Pouliot.
Pouliot, right.
Yeah.
And while we were in the studio, the recording engineer, Kenny Friesen, I think, who was the engineer on a lot of those great albums,
Yeah.
he suggested we needed a keyboard player.
Yeah.
Right?
He did. Yeah, right.
And
yeah, I remember that.
There was a phone
He got
call.
some scruffy guy to come in that we were like,
Well,
who is he?
he made his entrance then, and then there was the Shadows album where Michael appeared, and we'll bring Mike up in just a minute. Have a listen to the great keyboard stuff, man.
If you see me smile, don't think I'm acting strange. I got my just reward for all my...
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Heffernan.
Hey!
Hello, Michael.
Hello, Barry.
Welcome.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, sure, man. How are you?
I'm fine.
Oh, good.
Hello, everybody. I was a little late, hit rush minute here in Aurelia. So, anyways, and I went back to the hotel to get some stuff, and still, I didn't get the right stuff. So it was a lost mission. So, anyways, I'm here.
So tell us about what it was like. You got the phone call to come in for that one session, right?
Yep.
And then you started on the road with Gord the next year, or was it the Shadows album first, or tell us.
Well, what was supposed to be just a recording session to do this tune, they didn't even use the version we had for this. This was the Bruce Dern movie we were doing the theme song for. And I was just called in to do the session. So Gord liked what I played. In fact, when I finished, when we listened back, he said, "That's good." It was another 10 years before I got another compliment from him. So now that's not a shot. You know, a lot of people are like that in this business. If they don't say anything, it means it's okay. So, anyways, he liked what I was playing, so he decided to turn it into an audition. Because he had been tossing around the idea of adding keyboards to the band. So we played for maybe 5 hours, and all his tunes. And I didn't know a lot of the tunes, but a lot of them were fairly diatonic, and so I just played the odds what the next chord would be, and I got lucky for a lot of them. So he liked what I did. He described me to somebody else. I've heard this through the grapevine. I was like a hound dog. I could sniff out the chords. So that was November the 10th, 1980. So almost 44 years ago. Did I do my math right there?
Yeah, man, yeah.
And so I was working with Barry. Barry was the only guy I knew from the whole, other than Ken Friesen. And Barry and I were in a couple of sessions in December, and I said to him, what's going on with Gordon? And he said, I don't know. He says that, he hasn't mentioned anything, hasn't said anything about it. So I was in touch with Ken. On December the 23rd, Ken phoned me up, and he said, I got good news and bad news. He says, what do you want first? That old joke thing. Okay, give me the bad news. This is going to be cold as hell on Christmas Day, and the good news is you got the gig. And so early in January, then we got together for a couple of. It was not the whole band. One of them Barry couldn't make, and the other one Terry couldn't make. So my first time working with the whole band was on stage at the Mill Run Theater in Chicago, and that was it.
Circular stage that turned.
Yeah, I got to tell you something funny about that. We were this circular stage. The first time I was ever on, I felt like I was on a merry-go-round.
You were.
Anyways, I looked out. There was a couple of songs where Barry didn't play. I looked out in the audience at one point, and there's Barry sitting out there, smiling at me and trying to give me a little wave. I thought I was losing it. Another thing, they were having a little fun with me that day too. I remember that as I was setting up, I hadn't even seen my equipment before. It was all purchased in Seattle by our sound company, so I hadn't even seen it yet. I told them what to buy, and I got there. And first of all, as a joke, they had like one of those organs that you learn to play on. Every note had it's like A, B,
Color coded,
A flat,
right?
yeah, color code. And and I didn't even know this. There was bananas hanging out underneath the keyboard. Then at one point, Barry said, "Hey, Mike," and he tossed this thing, which was a stage weight. These things weigh. How much do those things weigh?
Oh, a lot.
Yeah,
they're
30
heavy.
pounds?
And so I just stood back and I thought, it's going to hit the keyboard. It turned out to be, one of those Nerf things. It was a fake one. But so they had a little fun with me. I have a story that I tell, which I won't right now because it's a little bit involved. That weekend was, on the way back, was my first experience with the private jet.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
anyways, you'll have to come to a performance to hear that story. I'm
just
going to tell that story in Hamilton tomorrow night.
So
I just
come
wanted
to
to
Hamilton.
interject something, yeah. A lot of people, it's been a while since all this happened, and a lot of people have lost track of some of the history of the Lightfoot Band's evolution. And a point I wanted to make, some people think that Mike replaced Pee Wee, because Pee Wee left the band in 1988. Mike did not replace Pee Wee, because Mike was added to the band in 1980.
Yeah, we overlapped for 6 years.
Yeah. So there was, it was great having all of them playing, Pee Wee and you and Terry all playing together. There was a lot of dynamic kind of color in the band then.
There was, for sure.
Yeah.
And a shameless plug for our Kitchener concert. We are all going to be back together.
Yeah.
We're bringing Pee Wee on board.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So
Okay.
come on out. There's still some tickets.
I think there are.
Yeah.
I think you're right. So then we did a whole whack of really good albums from the time you joined. And then, unfortunately, in around, was it 2010 we lost Terry?
11.
2011 we lost Terry. And if we could play one track here, I'll explain what this is from.
But for one more day, she would like to stay in the little Christian island. I'm sailing down the summer day.
Okay. Anyway, we missed the great mandolin kind of part there, that the new guitar player who had these enormous shoes to fill. Red Shea, what a great guitar player, back to David Ray, Terry Clements, of course. And filling those enormous shoes so well was the new guitar player, Carter Lancaster. Hey, Carter.
Hi, Bear.
How are you, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I think I'm gonna be here.
Yeah. Here.
Okay.
I'm going to go get a coffee.
So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
How was it joining the Lightfoot band?
Stressful. It was kind of strange how it happened. There's an iconic recording studio in Toronto where Gord, I think, recorded his last 2 albums, right? Called Grand Avenue Studios. And the owner, Bob Deutsch, and I were friends, and he was recording a solo album that I was doing on harp guitar. And I just stopped in one day because we had to do some mastering. And he was in his office talking on the phone, and he's going, I know. And I just poked my head in to let him know that I was there. And I swear his eyes went as big as plates, and his chin hit the desk. And he just said, I think our answer just came in the door. I got to call you back. And he hung up the phone. And I said, how's it going? And he goes, and he took a piece of paper and had a list of about 8 songs on it. And he said, you can play these, right? How long would it take you to learn these? And it was 8 Gordon Lightfoot songs. And I didn't recognize some of the titles, but I knew Read My Mind, and I knew The Wreck, and I knew Sundown. I said, these are Gordon Lightfoot songs? And he goes, yeah, they are. And I said, well, I could probably get through them right now, by ear. And he goes, no, you got to be able to play these things like you've been playing them for 40 years. I said, oh, okay. So I need a day, a song. And he goes, really? You could do that? I said, sure. And he goes, okay. And he said, I'm going to have the bass player Rick call you. And I thought this was a Gord Lightfoot tribute band. That's what I thought it was. And I wasn't even sure if I was interested at this point. And I said, and who's Rick? And he said, it's Gord's bass player. Gord who? Gordon Lightfoot. Gordon Lightfoot's bass player is going to call me. Yes, this is about the Gordon Lightfoot band. And I went, oh, okay. What's going on? I thought he had a guitar player. And he said, not something I can talk about, but there's going to be a performance coming up. It's an HBO special. Gord might need somebody for that day. And I thought, man, that'd be pretty cool to put on my resume. Sure. Yeah, I'd be into that, totally. So I went home, and Rick called. And we chatted on the phone, seemed to get along pretty well. And he said, I'm going to have Gord call you. I said, really? Okay. So Gord called, and I recognized his voice. Yeah, is this Carter? Yeah. Gordon Lightfoot. Right. Really? Yeah. I hear you want to come and play some songs at my house. I'm going to go to his house? Okay. So we scheduled a rehearsal on the Friday coming up. I had about 8 days to learn these 8 songs. And I went to Gord's house, and Rick was there, Mike was there. Barry, you weren't there.
I was not.
And it seemed like Gord didn't want me there. He seemed not happy that I was there, and he went out of his way to make me uncomfortable. So, for example, he showed me where the music room was. He said, this is your chair, this is your amplifier. Rehearsal starts at 1 o'clock, not 1:01, not 1:02. 1 o'clock, make sure you're in tune. Okay. So I sat down, I figured it all out, and then Gord walked over and he said, read my mind. And I was sitting in the chair, and he walked up to me, and he was literally a foot away from me with his guitar right there. His head is here looking down on me. I was really intimidated. It was 100 degrees in his house. The sweat is beating off my brow. And he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I start playing, and he starts playing, and we make it all the way through the song. I didn't pass out. And he just turns around, and I looked at Rick and I looked at Mike, and they're both looking at him. Nobody's looking at me. And I thought, Carter, you killed it. You just killed that tune. What's going on? And he walked over to his desk. He had a high desk so that he could have his guitar strapped on and make notes at the same time. And he just walked over to that piece of paper that he had, and he just went, check mark, big check mark. And he turned around and he goes, well, that wasn't bad. And Rick and Mike both go, yeah, it was really good, Gord. And he said, let's take a break. And I thought, take a break? We haven't even started yet. So we went and we sat out in the foyer, and Gord said, can you play electric as well as you play acoustic? And I said, yeah, of course. And he goes, I'll be the judge of that. I said, okay. So we went back in and we played the rec, and once again he stood right here, a foot away from me. The sweat is just, I look like I'd been in the gym for half an hour, I'm sure. And we played the rec, and I thought I killed it. And again, I'm looking at the guys, and they're both looking at him, and he walks over to his desk and does a great big check mark. And he turns around and he goes, well, that wasn't bad. Yeah. So he says, let's take a break. So we went into his foyer, and he said, can you go out on tour? And I thought, what is going on here? And I said, well, I was working at the time, and I said, well, I guess it depends on how long you go out on tour. And he said, we never, ever, 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 ever go out more than 11 days. The Pinocchio nose, that's what that was. And I said, yeah, I could do that. And with that, he gave me a list of some songs that I picked up from Grand Avenue. And one by one, I started listening to the songs and lifting the parts from the songs, but the parts from the songs weren't what he wanted in this version of the band. He wanted me to learn or listen to Red's parts and learn or listen to Terry's parts and combine the two of them, put them together, and then come up with my own part.
Could you demonstrate maybe?
I can.
Okay, I think the folks would like to hear that.
Mark, am I dead? You're dead. Thank you.
Because part of being a great musician is not just playing the notes, but it's adapting styles, adapting the way that you play the notes. And Carter has been so great at adapting to the Red Shea parts, the Terry Clements parts, and he has Carterized them, would you say, Carter?
Yeah, that's what Gord used to call it.
There you go.
Yeah. So I can't find a pick here, so I'll have to do this with my fingernails, but that's okay. So I remember when I first started listening to Reed, so I was given 8 songs, I think, by Gord, and I said, you know, Gord, if you just give me the whole set list, I'll just learn the whole set list. And he said, no, that's not the way we do things. And I realized afterwards he wanted to analyze every single part that I was doing and make sure that it was fitting in to what he wanted, and yet he wanted to change the parts. So I remember listening to Red Shea, and for Reed, he would do, I think it was Gord that was doing this part. And then Red was going over top of, so those 2 parts were happening. So I learned those. And when I played them at Gord's house, he did not like that. And I wasn't really sure why he didn't like that, but he didn't like that. And then I listened to the way Terry played it. And once again, but Terry, instead of going, he did it an octave lower. But he did the same D minor chord. So that's how Terry did it with a flat pick. And I learned that part too. And Gord didn't like that either. But he wasn't sure what he wanted. And he told me he wasn't sure what he wanted. But he said, when you play it, I'll know. And I said, okay. So it was about 2 or 3 rehearsals later. And I let Gord do that. And I did the Red Shea. But what I changed, because Gord had said, it's not ghostly enough. It's got to be ghostly. So ghostly to me means put a sixth on a minor chord. So I came up with that. And that sounds ghostly to me. So I left that open second string, the B, which is the sixth degree in the D minor chord. I left that, and I let it ring through the G major. And then I went back to Terry's part. Then I went back to Red's. And this is me. So that's how I...
Folks.
So I had to carterize pretty much every single song, pretty much every single part, without losing the integrity of the song, without leaving the song, and it was really hard to do. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life, because when you hear a song 1,000 times, the guitar parts become so integral that it's almost a sin to change them. Yeah. So to change them and make it better is hard. So I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.
Well, you've done such a great job of that, and we could sit here for another half hour and listen to you play, buddy, but...
Thanks, Barry. Thank
yeah,
you.
man.
Thank you.
Then last year, of course, we had the terrible tragedy of losing Gordon himself. And we got together and talked about what do we do now. We decided that we should move on. And how lucky were we? We found this great singer, this great guy. And if we could play a sample here. And we found this great guy, the latest addition to the Lightfoot band. Let's hear it from Mr. Andy Mock. That's you, buddy.
Yeah, talk about big shoes to fill, right?
You think?
You found me right under your nose. I met these guys in 1976, and because I was a fan, still am, major fan. I mean, major fan. And these guys were my musical heroes, and so I think I got to meet them, and a year later I got to meet them again, and a couple of them remembered me, and I've been stuck to them like glue ever since, and they're showing up all the time, and all that. And I think over the years they knew how much I appreciated the music, because that's what drew me to the whole thing, was the music. And I mean, yeah, I went to the Facebook. I think Gord was the coolest dude ever, I mean, I'm not, but if I was, that kind of stuff. But he had him around him, these musicians. And what sucked me in was listening. A friend of mine pointed out, when I said, you gotta hear this, you could read my mind. This is 1970, I'm 14 years old. And I tell my friend Pete Carey, who's a master guitarist even back then. He goes, oh yeah, Gordon Lightfoot's really cool, man. I mean, great songwriter, but here's what makes it great. And he lifts the needle up, and he goes, listen to this. There's this lick that Carter's now brought back into it. It might be Hess, which I appreciate that and if read my mind, that Pete said, that's the kind of thing that most artists don't think about. Every little note that in the fillers isn't just a fill, it's thought out. And little things like that add so much depth and color and class, the tastefulness of it. And so I started listening to music. It changed my life. I started listening to music differently. I mean, every other artist I listen to, it takes a lot to impress me. And, James Taylor is up there, people like that. But knowing these guys for so long, and of course Terry became my first real close friend in the band, and he shared with me a bunch of stuff, and Gord was aware that I liked that stuff because the few times I get to talk to him, I'd say, how did you come up with this part with Terry? I was just that nut who was all about the technical side of it, but I was always around, but none of them had heard me. I had been playing. I've never been a professional musician until I got this job, right? But I played a lot, obviously, at different events and whatnot, and for friends. But I was playing in retirement. I was happily, easily retired until these guys called. And anyway, I was just thinking I like to do this stuff. It's a lot of fun, but and I was singing, but. My friend John Corcoran, who he's a good friend of ours, he years ago said, you got a pretty good voice, but if you were to take some vocal instructions, it would really do something. So I went to my friend Pete, and he put me onto this girl Joellen, and she's an angel, and she really taught me techniques that has taken a while, but it really has given me the confidence so that when Rick called, I felt, well, I could try this. But Rick had heard me. Because I would never play in front of these guys. Because when I first got to know them on the road sometime, I think it was about 77 or 78, Terry takes me into Gord's hotel room, there's a little party going on, and some young guy who nobody knew came in with a guitar and played a really bad version of If You Read My Mind. And I said, that's never going to be me, ever. So I never would do that. But a few of us would bring guitars to their shows just to hang out in the bar, before the show when they're rehearsing stuff, or after the show, before the band shows up, but we just did it to entertain ourselves. But I studiously avoided doing it in front of any of these guys. And but I don't know, Rick, was it about 8 or 9 years ago?
You do a half-ass version of Tagalong.
Yeah, it was half-assed. Yeah. But Rick caught me. I think it was at the Pantages. I was doing one of my favorite songs that I hope to bring back one day. 10 degrees and getting colder. And I see Rick walk in the room. And I went, oh! And he was listening, and he was not talking to people. He was just walking around listening. And by the time I was done, he was standing right here. And he leans over and goes, you don't know how good that was. Well, that made me feel incredible. That was just a big moment in my life, right? So, but sometime later, he said, hey, if it ever happened to the middleman, would you be interested? I said, I could die tomorrow and be satisfied just the fact that you would even think of me. Well, unfortunately, he had the reason to call me. And, I still get emotional. It was the biggest honor of my life. But can I cut it with these guys? Yes, I know this material. I've been doing it forever. But these guys at the upper level, I don't know if you know this, folks. These guys are famous for being precise and accurate and tasteful and all the stuff you want. These guys. And that's why Gord kept them around for so long. They weren't chopped liver. Most artists, they just get another guy, or as Rick says, shake the bass player tree, another one will fall out, They're special. And here I had this opportunity and to keep the mission alive. And so I go up for the first rehearsal, and they all sent me nice notes saying, hey, you're going to be nervous, don't worry. It's just old friends playing music. And I said, easy for you to say. And we were in Mike's basement, and he said, well, let's start with something, whatever you feel like. What's easy? So I said, let's do The Watchman's Gone. And we weren't 3 bars into it. Stop. Too fast. Too fast are 2 words that come up a lot in this band. And too fast. And they had to stop me several times. And then once I thought I got that right, then they said, stop. You don't have to sing that loud, okay? You don't have to push it, but just as relaxed. Okay. And I'm getting that right. They said, you don't have to play guitar that much because there's a whole band around you. You just leave space for it, So I find myself, I blew this debut, right? And they laughed. They said, you've been playing solo in bars for a year, right? That's what happens. And it's true. You're playing over crowd noise. You're trying to keep things moving. You don't want voids. And all the little nuances that I wasn't even aware of. I just knew them because I was learning to sing by singing along with Gordon Lightfoot records. So I had the phrasing somewhat, but I forgot all that. And old habits die hard, but they have enough clubs and whips and stuff. They got me in better shape. And the little details that they have given me to improve me has just been immense. Little stuff that y'all wouldn't have noticed. But I think you notice the overall effect now, and I'm way better than I was, and thank you, and this is the coolest thing ever.
Andy, on behalf of the band, I can say we're so happy to have you as one of us, buddy. And folks, I could listen to these guys' stories forever, but we have to clear the room to get ready for the next workshop. So thank you all so much for showing up. I hope you had a good time, and like that, come see us again, okay?